Hey, well, let's talk about your music. Let's.
I can't help it. I get so interested in that, you know.
I mean, I know you've got a single out at the moment through Warren's Foxstar Records.
Yeah.
So how did that come about? Just out of interest, how did your connection with Warren?
It's thanks to Warren. I mean, I've known Warren a long time through. I first met him the old Hope Bar open mic days.
Yeah.
Back in the day, and it's just very kind. I mean, basically, where the album came about. Just to jump back to that one. I think you know Richard Bull. Do you know Richard? I know him through the BBC. He's a producer. Right. Produces Roddy Hart's show, and I've known him for years. What happened was, I mean, yeah. In terms of you were talking earlier about like output and stuff like that, and I've always played for years, but I'm really bad at getting around to recording and getting things finished. And I'd had all these songs for years, and so it was almost like a kind of running joke how long it was taking me to get an album together. And so Richard was very kind, like at the tail end of 2019, he basically, and before that a little bit, he was very kind to even just put up a bit of money to kind of get stuff started recording. And so we started that. But even that, I was still taking forever getting it done. So we put ourselves a deadline of beginning of 2020. And so we'd been recording before that, 2019. And so we finally did it, and thanks to his beginning it, and just lots of friends, you know, playing for nothing because I didn't have any money, and we basically finally finished this album and put it out at the end of February 2020, and that was we were just quite lucky because that was literally weeks before the lockdown started, you know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I never got it done, you know, and so that's why that album came about. It was thanks to Richard beginning it and just, you know, finally getting a bit of momentum, you know, and but then of course the world shut down, and so I couldn't tour with it or do anything with it. But I was very lucky and really pleased to finally get the album.
It's a great album. I mean, I really enjoy it. Enjoy it. I'm still enjoying it. I mean, it's a mix of songs, and you know, as I say, it's a kind of real hot potch of styles. They're all in the similar kind of, you know, it's a kind of Americana, I suppose these days you would call it, you know. But it's such a rich mixture. You know, this is like, you know, that kind of country. What's that one? Everything is there. Something like that. I can't remember any names of anything, but I'll tell you on the phone. Hold on.
Like the everything thing.
The everything thing, yeah, that's right. That's a kind of like a country song, but then you bring in sort of a New Orleans brass band, or, you know, almost, you know, sort of, but it fits perfectly. You know, it's kind of, it's in the mix. You know, it's interesting. You know, I mean, where did you record that? Did you?
Yeah, well, that one, that's off we recorded most of the album. We started in Green Door Studios, if you know the Green Door. You know,
Green Door, right?
It's it's called the Hidden Lane down that we.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
We started the first recording in there, but we did only a couple of days session, and then the rest of the album's down in a friend of mine, Mike Fowler's. He's the guy that plays double bass on most of the album, and he's got his own studio down by the Barras. I think it's just called On the Corner, and it's like quite cool actually, because it was like old disused offices that were just lying empty, and the landowners, whoever owned it, really said to people, you can just, you know, rent really cheap rent, and so a bunch of artists and musicians have kind of taken over that wee spot, and it's great. So we recorded most of the album there, and so that song, which is on the new single, The Everything Thing, was recorded there as part of the album sessions, you know. Right. And I think, I mean, it's definitely got a country feel about it. I love that sound, you know. But I'm really pleased to hear you say a kind of hodgepodge or a kind of mix of different things, because that's what I was hoping for with the album. In a way, I didn't want the album to sound too much like all the same, you know, like I wanted it to be a mix. You can't help it sounding kind of similar if you've got, obviously, me singing and the same songs I've come up with, and also a lot of the same musicians. But
that's all good to bring it. Having the same musicians actually is perfect, you know, when you've got different styles. And
well, that's good to hear. I was kind of worried. I didn't want it to sound too samey, but in a way, you can't help it. It's going to sound the same voice, and you know,
I do not think it sounds samey in any way. I mean, you've got some finger picking things. You've got some things which have got strings on them. You know, you've got some. You know, and you know, there's the dynamics are up and down. And, you know, it's a good album. I mean, it doesn't sound samey at all. You know.
That's what I'm doing. Thanks so much for saying. Yeah, but yeah. that was, and the kind of the brass thing was. It's really an interesting experience for me. I don't know how you found it with your own recording, but because I was so used to being just a live player, it was a new world to me, like recording. And so I had all these songs, which of course were written just me and the guitar, and then I had ideas of what I wanted. So it was a really interesting learning curve because I came in and I wanted it to sound quite country, and then and we had the kind of bare bones of it down, and then I had this idea that I wanted to have a trumpet mimicking the melody completely, and I remember Mike, the guy who recorded it and mixed it and played bass on it. He was a bit like, oh, but that might kind of throw it off a bit, it's really got a kind of country feel. And I was thinking, well, I mean, Johnny Cash does that with, like trumpet comes into that song. What, I've forgotten the name. I'm similar. I keep forgetting things. I forget names all the time. But Love is a Burning Ring of Fire. That's the one.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I was thinking, well, he does that, but I didn't want to just mimic that. But and then I just had this idea in my head: the trumpet should be doing that melody. And my original idea was, it's quite funny. This is an interesting thing about songwriting, and especially when you're working with another bunch of guys, because I'd had the whole song in my head, kind of, and I'm not super strict. I like to have changes, but I'd written it on acoustic guitar, and then my idea was there was going to be a break in the verses and the instrument. You know how the lyrics will stop and there's an instrumental verse, and I just basically wanted to have the trumpet doing the solo, so that would be it would just be mimicking what the melody was, and that's what it had, right? And then what happened was we hadn't had the trumpeter in yet, so I said, okay, everybody, so this is the bit where you basically just play it as if I'm singing it, but just keep it instrumental. And Paddy, the guy who plays guitar, Paddy Coyle, he's an amazing electric guitarist. And I think he's just too used to doing solos, because I said to everyone, okay, so this is the bit where I'll stop singing, but just carry on playing. Trumpet will be going on later, But it's almost like he forgot, because he just starts doing this amazing, I mean, it's on the track, this amazing kind of electric guitar solo.
Yeah, I thought about that actually. It was kind of interesting. The electric guitar actually fitted perfectly, but I mean, it was kind of slightly unusual at the same time, given the sort of nature of the song,
I know, it's kind of weird. Starts doing this solo, almost he kind of mimics as like a, what do you call it, that kind of lap steel sound.
Yeah.
And I remember afterwards I was staying, I'm meaning like to not have anything over there, but it sounds amazing, so I've got to keep it on. So then the trumpet comes in a bit later. So the point I was going to say is that you have this kind of idea, but then it kind of molds and changes, and that's why the trumpet does mimic the melody, but I just sang over it, and then the girl Ali that does the trumpet, she just on her own accord starts doing this kind of like New Orleans style kind of thing behind it, and it becomes this big kind of carnivalesque atmosphere.
Yeah,
and that's really written that way. It was just the product of everybody in a bunch of people in a room. We recorded that mostly as live,
Right.
Trumpet.
Right.
But and I love that evolution of that song, because that doesn't happen that way with me just in the guitar. It's interesting.
I mean, I suppose that. I mean, you're the producer, I guess, in some sense. You didn't have another producer, is that right? You didn't have somebody who was producing the album, is that right?
No, other than Mike Mike Fowler and Richard Bull, my friend. We were kind of hoping to at least kind of orchestrate roughly what we did, but it was ultimately my say, I guess. Like what eventually,
right.
What it was going to.
Yeah, because it's well arranged. The whole record has got a uniform character to it in terms of the way it's arranged and stuff, which is good, because it sounds like the same band playing the songs and the same person that wrote them, that kind of thing. And it does sound like it's been produced, as in somebody's thought about it, which is good again. Because I mean, one of the things that I think it takes a long time for people. I mean, it's unusual that you've managed to do that having not done it before. Because it's pretty damn good, because it is a lesson to learn, is to go from playing a song on an acoustic guitar and somehow translating that to a recording with other instruments, because there's a lot of decisions to be made. I mean, it took me quite a long time to understand that process as well, because when I was a kid, I played acoustic guitar when I was a kid, and I didn't understand it actually fully until, strangely enough, I read a book about Tom Waits.
Oh, yeah.
I was reading this tome about Tom Waits, and it came to this chapter where he's going in to record his first album, right? And the guy, he had a producer, obviously got the record deal. Was it somebody Bones? Can't remember the producer's name. And
Bones. Yeah.
Bones Howe, is that his name? Yeah. So he said to Tom Waits, what do you want this album to sound like? Do you want it to be jazz? Do you want it to be folk? And I thought, what does he mean? Surely he just plays the songs. He's written them on the piano, or he just plays the songs. But no, they make a decision up front. If we decide it's going to be this, we will bring in the musicians that suit that style. And to me, I remember that being a complete revelation for me personally. This idea that you can make a decision, not just play your song as you wrote it, but decide what it's going to sound like. And that, that in some sense is arrangement and production. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, for me, it was definitely kind of learning as you go. I mean, but also I wouldn't want to take full credit for it, as if I would sort of eventually decide, I want it that way. But it was very collaborative, that album. Like, I'd written all the songs lyrically and structurally, but there was definitely the other musicians and Richard too would be kind of throwing in ideas and things like that. So I mean, in terms of arrangement, a lot of that was just because I had such a great bunch of musicians that would say, we should, like, I mean, there's one song called "Wouldn't That Be Grand," which is like again in that kind of mold of kind of 20s, or meant to have that kind of almost theatrical sound to it. And so I'd written it like that, and then my friend Jim McAteer, who plays amazing violin on that song, he came up with the idea of doing this kind of almost suddenly go to like a minor key and like kind of Baltic sort of it's kind of like this kind of weird waltz we suddenly start doing. That was his kind of suggestion, and we just kind of found the chords. So effectively that song's co-written, because I didn't think to go that way.
I did notice that, and I noticed it from the perspective of me being a songwriter, thinking, that was good. That was a good choice, because it changes the mood. It takes it forward, because there's a million ways you could have went like that, or just went nowhere with it. You could have just started the next bit. You know what I mean? So it was a change that really worked. That's good. So I suppose to a certain extent, you're saying that the band was what made it what it is in some sense. The members of the makeup of the band, the type of musicians,
I mean, it's interesting to think about it. Like, in terms of songwriting, I mean, it made me think about the whole thing, because I'd written all those songs, all of them are lyrically mine, but and all the band songs, structurally and chords, are all mine, except that's one example where he suggested this minor change, so that was definitely him. But what I found really useful was just people would just do things or suggest things that it wasn't so kind of thought out, but the songs would kind of evolve a wee bit, but they're still, like, I'd been in bands before where we really do just collaborate as it happens, and those songs, but these songs are still, without wanting to sound like kind of an ownership thing, but they're still kind of, the bones of them were there, and then what was really useful is to have other people, just by their playing or just suggesting things, it would definitely evolve into something a bit different. But I think that was more on a kind of arrangement side of things, because I would still sometimes say, no, like, just like I said, like Mike was like, not only one trumpet here, but sometimes you want to stick to your guns, and we've been like, no, I definitely want trumpet here, and but you don't want to become a control freak either. I guess they're your songs, but it was a good lesson for me. I was really jumped in the deep end with that album. It's like, I didn't know half of what I was doing most of the time, but it was good to just kind of ride the wave of it, it's good.
No, it works. I mean, it's pretty sophisticated music, a lot of it, it's not, I mean, some of it's three chords, country or blues, but some of it's, more of that kind of 20s and 30s sort of jazz, which has got the odd chord beyond that.
I always loved that. I learned a lot of the kind of more jazz chords. I definitely wouldn't think myself as a jazz player, but like, the more kind of, I don't even know half of the names of some. My dad told me a lot of the kind of, minor fifth type chord jazz. He would just call them jazz chords. And suddenly that song, Wouldn't That Be Grand? I love that kind of sound of the kind of storytelling and the kind of theatrical thing. No coward-esque, or and it's not like that's all I would want. I just like to throw in a few kind of left bowl curves, whatever you call it. You know, like I do like that kind of sound, but I also just love going back to the kind of blues sort of structure or country. You know, I like to mix it up a bit if I'm able to at all. You know.
No, it's good. And all these people that are on it, I mean, these are just friends that you managed to purloin to come along. I mean, it's great playing on it. Absolutely.
I mean, there's some playing in the Glasgow and mic scene for years and getting to know a lot of musicians. I mean, as you know yourself, Glasgow's full of amazing players. And
absolutely.
So I just kind of just drew them all together, really. And, you know, and there was a mix of other people that came in later to kind of lay down tracks. And it wasn't all recorded as live. It was maybe the main band songs had a kind of, like, the kind of bass and drums and guitar parts. And then we would add a bit more. But it was all a steep learning curve for me, you know. But it was a good lesson in how songs can come about, because I was used to just writing on my own, and they all are basically written on my own lyrically. But it was a good example of trying to just see what other people suggest, you know. It's good.
No, it hangs together. I mean, even you're saying it wasn't like a band that had been playing, I assume, gigs for a long time, playing the same songs. It sounded pretty together for folk that had just come in the studio. And you know,
I think the luck of such good players, you know. But we did jam it out. I mean, like I said, it wasn't like we did it all in an afternoon. We had been recording a little bit, and I mean, we'd have rehearsals quite a bit, but it was I wanted to get a bit of that kind of recorded as live sound, so we did rehearse up to it. But I was lucky. I think I was really lucky.
No, it's a great record. I mean, you've sort of scoped out, in some sense, who you are on that record. You know, you've said, well, here's me. This is the sort of sound I play. This is the kind of music I write. You know, this is how I sound, which is a great thing to do. It's distinctive. You know, you've got a great voice, which is a very distinctive voice, and say that kind of Americana sound, which is a real gumbo of influences, which I can relate to them all. You know, some of what I do is that kind of thing. But no, you know, we're all different. So I can kind of appreciate it. You know, there's a sophistication to it, as well as I say, the three chords thing, which appeals to me. You know, anything that sounds like something I couldn't write, I'm always impressed. I don't know those chords.